Alright. 3, 2, 1. What's happening, everyone? Welcome back to the greatest podcast you've never heard of. This is MC Podcasting, episode 135. Got it right that time?
Nice one, mate. Nice
Not
one. Getting
proud of
better. Learning to count. Learning to
Yeah,
count.
wrote it down there. Wrote it down just to make sure. I was like, Jesus, this is gonna be a hard number to say. That's a big number. That's 3 digits. Jesus.
Big episode.
Anyway, good episode, wasn't it? Who's our guest, Stephen? Who's our guest, Stephen?
This was a guy who owns a bar.
That's it. That's all. Just a wee small bar, not a big bar. Like,
just the greatest bar in the world, mate.
I don't know. You sure? Has anyone heard about it? So we had Jack McGarry on. For anyone who doesn't know, he is the owner, the founder of the Dead Rabbit Bar bar/restaurant in New York City. It was a great chat, wasn't it, Stephen?
Was, mate. Yeah, covered all bases. How he got started, why he wanted it, like how he basically got into that industry and stuff. But it was good talking to him because he's a lad from here.
He's from Belfast, yes.
Yeah, it's kind of went over there and is just living the fucking
American dream. There you go. You know, I didn't want to sound too cheesy or too cliche there, but it is like to do that, like, is fucking hell. It's
insane.
Must be an amazing feeling. But yeah, it's one of these things we touched on the podcast about people just think, oh, he's a bartender, went to American, just kind of fell into it. It's kind of like, nah, this guy was obsessed with like cocktails, you know what I mean, like the art and the craft of cocktail making, not just making strawberry daiquiris or making Sex on the Beach in the Beach Club like I was doing. Wasn't doing that there. Well, he probably couldn't make it in the Beach Club. You know what I mean? So,
yeah, that's it. We didn't ask him that.
Didn't ask him that there.
It's all well and good doing it in New York, but can you do it Tuesday night in a beach club?
You are
now listening to MCPodcasting.
Jack, first of all, thanks for coming on the podcast. It's great to talk to you. We're having a conversation before you jumped on there. Is this the first time in a while? It's actually, it feels good being a Man U fan, doesn't it?
First time in about 5 or however long he's gone, Sir Alex is gone. But yeah, I still catch myself trying not to get too ahead of myself. I'm waiting on the next big fuck up, you know. So
yeah,
it seems like we've turned a corner. But I mean, how many times have we said that?
Oh, exactly.
You know, so.
What's it like over there? Obviously, you're in New York at the minute, aren't you?
Yeah.
So what's it like over there trying to watch the football? Do you not feel a wee bit of a detachment? Because whenever I'm in America, when I'm trying to watch the football or the soccer over there, it feels like no one really cares about it. I
mean, yes, nobody does really care about it in the context of like American football and baseball and basketball and hockey and whatever else sports you've got, you know. But in terms of me, I very rarely miss a game now because it's every single Premier League game is on TV. Every single one. Not you, like, doesn't matter who you follow, you'll be able to get it live and at any time. You know, like the 3 o'clock kickoff back home, it's difficult to get some of them. I think it's got easier now, but for me, the way the timing, it's a lot easier for me to catch the games because I can watch it before I go to work or before I go out. It's great, but I mean, it sucks that you don't go to a pub and you can't watch it with your mates type thing. I remember, like, I go and watch the football with my dad, and obviously that you can't do that when you're in New York, you know.
Yeah,
and just while you're there, like, obviously you've experienced a lot of American sports. Just how shit are American sports?
I mean, I have to be careful here because I'm married to an American, so I have to thread the needle. But I mean, so when I moved over to New York, I was very much on the bandwagon of I'm not getting into American sport, and I'm pretty much still on that bandwagon aside from American football, which I've actually got into, but through the fact that my wife's family are New York Giants fans, which to put that in a Premier League perspective, it's like following Burnley, you know. So it's not a lot of fun, but I enjoy that. But like baseball and all that type of stuff are fucking awful to watch, you know, terrible. So it's like watching it. To me, it's like watching cricket.
American football is getting big over here now. It's like a hipster thing to like American football.
It's very hipster.
It's really weird. Like, it's really fucking weird. I don't know. I don't understand it. Anytime I put it on, it's just literally adverts and people walking away.
Well, that's the thing. It's good because you don't have to really pay attention to it.
Yeah.
You know, you only have to really pay attention when they get into the last 20 yards. but it's the same. Like I see a lot of people in life like rugby back home. I mean, when I was brought up, nobody fucking cared about rugby, but now people seem to like it, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's another hipster sport. And when Sky Sports have nothing to talk about when they start mentioning American football on Sky Sports News, it's like, Jesus, this is god awful. But speaking of you living in New York, like it must be a good thing for the last like 6-7 years or so, because Man United have been so poorly. You can almost like detach yourself from Man United because there's no one's talking about Man United probably in New York. You're like, I can escape fucking the David Moyes and the Van Gaal eras over there.
I don't know. I mean, I'm fairly addicted to like watching Sky Sports News, and like I listen to the MEN podcast and stuff like that. So when it's going bad, I'm still like my wife will tell you if they lose, I'm not to be spoken to for the rest of the day, So it still affects me, but I think back home you can't escape it in terms of like Liverpool fans or Man City fans. Where over here you don't really see that,
Yeah, I know what you mean. So, Jack, I think what we really want to talk about obviously is the Dead Rabbit. Obviously, you're the founder of the Dead Rabbit in New York City. The Wall Street district it's known as, is it?
The financial district. So we're about 2 or 3 streets away from Wall Street, but the area that we're in is known as the financial district.
Yeah. So I've actually been to your bar a few times, and it's a great bar, by the way. And but was it the best bar in the world twice now you got voted it, or is it once?
Yeah, so we won it in 2021 now. We won it in 2016 and 2017. Generally the way those things go, you're at the top for a year or two, maybe 3 if you're lucky, and then you'll drop back down for the next person to get it. It's very rare that you see somewhere maintaining it. But yeah, we got it for 2 years in a row, and I'd say now that's sort of to get back to your point. Like now we're way better than we were in 2016 and 2017. But we're I feel like a lot of people have, and rightly so, feel like the Dead Rabbit has got its time, and it's time for other people to get the prize.
Did you notice whenever you won an award like that, like more attention comes onto your bar? Does your revenue go up? Did more people get in there, and does it really make that much of a difference?
I mean, all of those things, I think we maximized it in terms of the PR side of things, and in terms of the revenue. Like when you won it, there was definitely huge uptick in interest from the PR side of things. People wanted to speak to you, like Playboy, New York Times, like Forbes, you can name them all, and we got tremendous amount of PR traction out of it. And then obviously as a byproduct of that, we got like the bar was just packed all the time. But that presented other problems in terms of it was too busy, too difficult to get in. The product suffered, and that kind of series of events led to us extending in the next door and eventually getting to a place where we're opening up in different markets. But I mean, the awards were very important for the time in terms of building the brand.
Because I guess a lot more people are going to come to your bar and they're expecting this to be the best bar in the world. So I'd imagine there's an element of pressure that gets put on yourself.
I mean, it's huge. There was always that expectation, because we were pretty vocal about when we came, because obviously we ran the bar in the Merchant, and it was known as the world's best bar for a period of time too. People were coming to and expecting that level, but obviously when you're called world's best bar and you've won the award for it, that's an entirely different set of pressures, and the difficulty of it is that there's like the beauty is in the eye of the beholder. World's best bar means something completely different to you than it does to me, than it does to somebody else, so for some people it's a pub, for other people it's a 5-star hotel bar. So navigating that terrain was definitely very difficult, presented lots of challenges, but I think we've very much come out of it stronger for it.
But it must be such a satisfying feeling to be the best at anything, whatever it is, but to be the best, and it's such a competitive market. In like obviously opening a bar or a pub, did you have time to actually enjoy it, or as Stephen said, did the pressure start then? Because that means people come to your bar expecting the best bar in the world, so you didn't have time to actually sit back and enjoy the award, so to speak.
I don't think we enjoyed it. There's a lot. I don't think it was back in that time. I think it was very difficult and it's still now. I'm very much a person that when something's achieved, it's like great. I'm getting better at like enjoying it for like a day or something like that. But as soon as I wake up the next day, I'd say I have to attack something else. So I take great solace and great pride out of seeing our guys executing our kind of our concept and the way obviously our customers respond to it. But I mean, it's the same with you guys building this business. Any business that you're in, there's always something that you're not happy with, or something that you want to tweak, or something that you want to improve on, and it's very much the same here. We obviously got to the summit in terms of being called the world's best bar, but in retrospect, when I look back, I find it difficult to believe that we actually achieved that, considering where the bar is now. You know, there's a lot of things I look back and go, oh, Jesus, I wish I had done that, or I wish I had done this. But obviously, I'm proud of it. But I don't spend a great deal of time thinking about it. I'm constantly thinking forward and being better and improving.
Do you mind going back to the start with us, Jack? And like, when you started off, did you always want to work in the hospitality industry? Like, did your end goal, was it always to own a bar or work in a bar?
So no, it was a pretty strange way I got there, to be honest. You know, I'm sure it's you're the same as yourselves back in Belfast. You know, I working class family and wasn't like we were flush with money, and you're constantly asking your man and dad for a land of a fiver, a land of a tenner, and I think it got to a point that you're asking for a land of money that you've absolutely no intention of ever paying back. So I think my mum particularly had enough of it one day. I wanted to go and buy the new Ben Sherman top, or the new whatever the thing was that we were all wearing back then, you know. So I was asking for that. My mum said, no, if you want it, you've got to go and get a job and earn it. So I knew I had a cousin that ran the hunting lodge in West Belfast, and obviously it was my father's cousin. So I asked my dad to ask him, could I get a job there? And I got a job there, and it was just a glass collector. It was just before the smoking ban, so it was collecting glasses, cleaning ice trays, cleaning the floor and all that type of stuff. And I just took to the hustle and bustle of it. But at that stage, I wanted to be, I thought my geography teacher was the coolest guy in the land at that point. And that's the sort of path that I wanted to go down, being a teacher and pursue a degree. But when I got into the bar industry, I followed my cousin around who ran Hunting Lodge. He ended up going to run Cafe Vaudeville and other places. And then I met another guy, and then that eventually led me on to Sean, who's my now business partner, who ran the cocktail bar at the Merchant. And I quit.
Is it Sean Muldoon in it? The guy who's co-owner of the Dead Rabbits?
Yeah. So I started getting a passing interest in cocktails, and a guy called Kieran Breen, who was a former pupil of Sean's, said that if you wanted to be the best in Belfast, and indeed UK at that stage, if you wanted to really be the best and learn as much about cocktails, you had to go and work with Sean at the Merchant. So that's really what I did, and I ended up at the Merchant when I was 17, 18. And to be honest, that was the kind of the period where I was taking a year out to go on to university. But upon taking that year out, I just realized that there's a career to be made out of this if you do it at an elite level, and if you're amongst the world's best at it. And I felt it was something that I could excel at and could be amongst that tier. So that's what really, when I decided to attack it aggressively and dedicate my whole life to it, you know.
Because when people talk about your bar, talk about you, people will say, there's a guy who worked in the Merchant, moved to New York, opened the bar, and became the best bar in the world. That wasn't as straightforward as that, there was it? Like you were like you were a really good bartender. It wasn't like you worked in the front page pulling heart pints. You're actually making like really complex. You're competing with you and like making cocktails and all too.
Yeah, I mean, I wish it was that linear. It was very, you know, so when I was 17, 18, 19, 20, when most people were out partying, I was in the house studying books from the 19th century, from the early 20th century, and working in the words. But I went and worked in Milk and Honey. I went and studied the way you would study if you were doing a degree. You know, it was an intense amount of study. And then obviously when we came to New York, we were telling people back home we'd have this open in 6 months. And it was so naive in hindsight, because nothing in New York happens in 6 months. You know, there's just so much bullshit that there comes with being here. And it ended up being we opened 2.5 years later. But I mean, we had no money. It was like we were eating one meal a day in a Mexican, like a really cheap and cheerful Mexican place, and buying secondhand clothes, and every night and every free moment we had was dedicated to thinking about the bar, developing drinks, developing food, interviewing staff, you know. And it's one of those things. A lot of people, when they see you doing well, it's like they see that moment and they don't see everything that went into that moment beforehand, you know. So I certainly wish it was that linear, but it definitely wasn't.
So you met Sean in the Merchant Hotel?
Yes, I did, yeah.
You said you started working there at 17. How long were you at the Merchant for?
So so he was there for 5 years, and I came on board just after it was its first anniversary. So this is just when the hotel had opened. So I was there for about 4 years, and we left. I might be getting my dates slightly mixed up here, but I believe we left in 2009, 2010, end of 2009, because it's coming up. I think this year's my 10th anniversary in America now, in New York. But I spent a year in London, and Sean came right away. So yeah, it's been quite some time. We've been working together now.
And whose idea was it? Was this like a general conversation that led to an idea, or the one who's had this, hey, we should go to New York and open a bar?
So there was we capitalized on luck, you know. The bar was obviously really well, the Merchant was really well known, and we started getting quite a lot of attention in Belfast. But obviously, as you guys know, Belfast is a small pond. But if you do something well, you'll get noticed. But we started. There was one guy particularly who came in and frequented the bar a lot, and he ended up becoming our angel investor. But he spent 1 week out of every 6 in Belfast, and then for the other 5, he was either in America or traveling globally. And he came into the Merchant, and he started drinking strawberry daiquiris and vodka type drinks, fruity drinks, like really, really base level introductory type cocktails. And once his palate developed, he started moving into old fashioned Sazeracs, like really, 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 really complex drinks. And when he traveled all over the world, he asked for the best bars, the best bartenders. He wanted to see what it was about. And with that travel, he went to every great bar. And with that travel, he felt like what we were doing in the cocktail bar was amongst the best in the world. And he wanted to invest in us to bring our version of a great bar to London or to New York. And then basically we were coming to the end of the road in the Merchant. The Merchant was at that phase. They had just taken over the old bank, but they were starting to build out the back of the hotel, and it was becoming a bit more corporate and that type of thing. So we were looking for an out. The hotel, I believe, was looking for an out from us, because I think we were outgrowing the hotel, and the hotel didn't like that too much, to be perfectly honest with you, which is fine. You know, if, again, looking back, I would have fired me and Sean as well.
So you mean you and Sean were getting like a lot more attention? You mean? Yeah.
Yes, but we were also, again, being younger, and particularly for me, I was 18, 19 at that point. I looked at the Merchant like a cocktail bar with rooms, as opposed to a 5-star hotel cocktail, you know, a 5-star, you know, so I didn't. And there was a lot. I was very immature, and the culture was quite divisive in terms of from the bar to the restaurant and to the other departments, you know. So we very much operated like our own thing within a bigger thing, you know. And I think that was creating friction. So yeah, it was ended up at that time that the guy Connor Allen offered us the opportunity to open a bar in New York, and his only brief was to build a bar that won't be here today and gone tomorrow, like a flash. And Sean started thinking about what could we do. So his whole philosophy in terms of opening the Dead Rabbit was to build to bring together the two loves of our lives, which were cocktail bars and Irish pubs. And the two frame of references were the Duke of York and the Merchant Hotel cocktail bar. So we really wanted to bring together cocktails, but in an unpretentious setting, because cocktail bars, like in cocktail bartenders particularly, it can be a lot of pretense and egotism and all that type of stuff. We wanted to bring cocktails to the masses, and to do that, to bring that over to America, we knew that the Irish immigrants obviously arrived in New York in the 1850s, and sort of coexisting with that, the first ever cocktail book was written in 1862 from a bartender in New York. So we knew that the Irish and the cocktail thing was happening together in New York in the middle of the 19th century, and there was a guy called John Morrissey who really brought all that together. And he was a one-time leader of the Dead Rabbit. And you could have, like, we could sit here and have a podcast just about John Morrissey. But yeah, that's what led us to opening the Dead Rabbit. And yeah, the rest is history.
And so it's been open, 10 years now, has it, you said? Is this your 10th year?
So we opened, it's my 10th year in New York. Sean's 10th year was last year. But we opened the bar. We opened the bar in February 12th of 2013. I think this is our 7th or 8th year in operation now. Yeah. So.
See, to open a bar in itself is expensive and it's probably more hassle sometimes. But to open in New York City, probably one of the most expensive cities in the world. So you actually, just taking from your story there, you never actually been to New York beforehand? No, it's your first when you came to New York.
I was in New York. I was in New York. I done there was an exchange program for kids in the West to go to America and stay with an American family for a month or whatever. I think it was 4 to 6 weeks, and so I'd been through New York and spent a lot of time in Philadelphia, but I hadn't been to New York, and I didn't understand New York the way I came literally I was a kid and I just didn't understand it. So I was pretty much fresh off the boat.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it wasn't like I had any deep understanding of how the city worked or operated. You know.
Yeah, I'd see the whole design of the Dead Rabbit. Was that down to you and Sean, the whole setup and all too? Because I've been in New York about 6 times now, and I feel like it is so unique. Probably the Dead Rabbit and McSorley's probably are very similar in terms of their setup, but all the other bars are so different. They used to definitely stand out. Did you have a decision in the whole setup? Yeah.
We had a very definitive. We knew because we had spent that much time researching and working on it. We knew what everything looked like and how it was going to be. So we had some assistance from one of the partners in terms of navigating the kind of regulatory environment and connecting the dots with contractors and that side of things. But it was very much it was our vision brought the reality, you know. And when we got to New York, and I'm sure you guys know this yourselves, it's when you go to the Irish pub in New York and the Irish pub in America, it's not a pub, you know. It's a pile of shite, you know. You know, there's a guy with a dodgy accent behind the bar, terrible pint of Guinness, terrible glasses, TVs everywhere. So we really wanted to kind of challenge the status quo with that, and we also wanted to fuse our model with world-class cocktails, but again, unpretentious and do proper Irish food, but also really showcase the best of Ireland through its people, places, and that side of things, and its products. We wanted to capture the authenticity of the island. Whereas, as you know, it's like a lot of these bars are just. There was a bar I went to in Cushendall, and the owner, a very funny guy called, I think it was Ronald or was it Randy McDonald or something? I can't remember his name, but he referred to these bars as McFakes. And I see it's exactly how I feel about a lot of them. They're terrible operations. There is some great ones like McSorley's, as you said, Swift, and there's a bunch of other ones throughout America, but there's still a lot of work to be done to really remedy that.
I would say they have a bit of a different culture when it comes to drinking in America than we do back home. There's always this thing, you'd mentioned Guinness, I don't know if this is a myth or not, but they always say it doesn't travel well. So and you obviously serve Guinness, I'd imagine. I've never been to New York, so obviously, do you notice a difference? Is this just a complete another myth that people tell each other, or is there a massive difference between the pint of Guinness you get in Dublin City to the one that you get in New York?
I mean, so there is a difference in the sense of the psychological side of things.
Yeah.
So for people who drink Guinness, having it in Dublin versus, you know, there's definitely a psychological thing, or even having it in like the likes of the Duke of York and Kelly's. For me, it's the processes behind it. Like, the Guinness has to be stored right, the lines have to be clean, the glasses have to be clean. Like, there's a lot of that type of stuff that you can do to mitigate that. But I think it's very tough to compete with the air back home, or the vibe, or Irish people being around you, you know, or that banter, you know, all that stuff you can't capture.
See, we have a running joke that when we're out and we're at the bars, and say there were 6 lads and you all have Guinness, and one lad takes a drink and he says, "Oh, the Guinness isn't great," everyone at that table will agree with him. They'll say, but if the same lad said, "That's lovely pint of Guinness," everyone, "Lovely, that's cracking Guinness, they've got great stuff." And then me and Dan would always say to each other, "I can't really tell the difference."
It all tastes the same, like.
No, there definitely is. There is I can tell by the way that it looks and by the way that the sound that it makes when it hits the table. There's a certain, there is definitely tells, but you know, when you guys are going to Kelly's or Duke of York or bars in Dublin, you know, like you're talking about Champions League level pints of Guinness, so there is very difficult. There's not a lot of difference there, but there's still, like, you definitely can tell the difference. But again, it's all about how you, again, the bars over here, they don't treat it right, they don't look after it right, they don't do the right steps. So we definitely believe we do one of the best in the city and in the country. But if you're talking about competing against the great pubs of back home, it's tough to say that you compete with, you know.
And sometimes the ones in America don't even let it settle. And the head comes out about that size.
It's just ridiculous.
Like, you can't really send it back, can you?
They're just used to drinking bottles of Budweiser, mate.
I know. I shouldn't order it. But here, speaking of pints, are you the only bar in New York that actually sells harp pints on draft?
I don't. So there's a big Irish contingent out in Queens and Bronx, I believe. So I have to go out to that area, like Sunnyside and stuff like that. There's a big Irish contingent out there, and I'm fairly certain that we're not the only bar. I'd say we're the only bar probably in I'm going out on a limb here, probably in the financial district. There is other Irish bars, but I'm not. I think again, harp is like a north thing. Yeah. It's not really a southern thing, so I think that's probably what makes it unique. But I mean, again, harp, it's a good beer. Like, you know, it's a good beer when you put it up against Bud Light and the other fucking piss. You know, it's pretty good.
I'm not a massive fan of harp, but I was in obviously I don't mind it. I wouldn't rush to get it. But once I was at the Dead Rabbit and I saw it, I was like, the fucking inner, like, that's fucking harp from back home. Gotta get a pint of harp. I was like, even though I wouldn't have ordered harp back home at all, I just had to order it.
We got a tourism crowd, you know, when a lot of people definitely order, you know, and that's a big part we're missing right now, obviously, with the restrictions, you know. So the tourism market looks like it's not going to be back online for quite some time. But we put it in there for nostalgia, practice, you know. So for people coming back home and you've went to see the Statue of Liberty and you feel like your mouth's sandpapered, you know, coming in and down in a pint of harp. That's what it's there for, you know.
Yeah. So you moved over in, was it 2011 then? Is that correct?
I did, yeah.
So how long did it take?
Yeah, 2011, yeah.
So how long did it take from you arriving in New York till the bar actually opened? Was it a long period of time?
A year and a half it took to get it open. And it was tough, you know, because it was myself and Sean came over. My ex-girlfriend came over, and then Sean's wife eventually came over just as we were opening the bar. But I mean, you were completely, like, you left all your friends, all your family, all that side of things. You left all the comforts of home back home, you know. So you were coming over and everything over here was, you know, a lot of people come over to New York and they're like, oh, it's lovely. Like, to me, New York's amazing, but everything over here was like, getting a phone was hard, getting a SIM card, everything was fucking hard, because it was a completely different to back home. And then you have to just climb, like, we all speak the same language between America and obviously back home, but we don't. Different.
Yeah, I was gonna say we speak the same language, but we don't speak the same language at the same time.
Exactly. So it was challenging. You know, it definitely took some time to kind of acclimatize and understand the environment. But I'm glad that the bar didn't open like within 6 months, because we wouldn't have been able to with the amount of time it took us to get open, we fully understood the operating.
Sorry, you kind of froze there. Can you see me? Can you all see me okay? Yeah.
Yeah.
We're all I can see you.
I think it's my internet. Sorry, lads. Because it is a big. Obviously it's risky opening a bar, like, but obviously they're doing it in a different city where you don't really have that many connections in comparison. If you open a bar in Belfast, you would have known a lot of bartenders, probably a lot of waiters, waitresses, not too. But opening in New York where you had zero connection, was that hard just to get it started?
Yeah, it was hard, you know. It was, and it took its toll. Ultimately, you know, it was very, very difficult. But, and even thinking back, like, it's all a blur now when you think back, because it was a couple of years of 100-hour weeks, and there was no space for anything else. You know, it wasn't like you were going out and enjoying the city when we opened the bar. It was just hardcore, getting it online, making sure everybody was doing things right, learning by literally, you were making mistakes every day, figuring it out, and just it was very, very hard. But we were able to stick through it, and we persevered, and it's in a great place now. There's still things we want to improve, but it was challenging. I mean, the easiest thing would have been to do it back home, but when you're offered the opportunity to come and to test yourself against, because again, New York was the epicenter for the cocktail movement at that time. So you were literally testing yourself against the best in the city, or the best in the world.
Yeah.
See, now that you've all this experience and you're running your own bar, how difficult does it make it going into other bars? Like, how hard is it not to be critical? How hard? Like, if you come back home, you're like, oh, I don't know about this. What way is he making that cocktail over there? You know.
I mean, it is tough, but yeah, I think again, when I was younger, there was a lot of arrogance. Like, that's wrong. You're not doing that right. You know. And now I look at everything through the lens of like. It's the same. I'm a prolific reader, so even if I read a book and I pull one thing away from that book, to me that's a fruitful exercise. And if I go into any bar, not 9 times out of 10, I can usually find something that they're doing better than us, be it their napkins or their something small that I can take away. But it's also equally as important to go in and see what they're not doing right. And how like maybe you're not doing that right also, and you need to improve on that. But when I go into bars now and I see people not doing things right, I'm a bit more relaxed and mature about it. I don't really
I feel like if I was in your position, I would be, hanging by the bar and just saying, you know what, I run the dead rabbit, mate.
So I get upset. I get upset when people tell people that I'm involved with the bar, because I tend, like, it freaks people out, so I, like, my mum and dad, like, my dad particularly loves telling people about the bar. And I'm like, can you start, like, it's a proud father or proud mother thing. And even with my wife, I'm like, don't tell any, because the bar's well known over here too. And I'm like, please don't tell anybody, because I don't want to talk, because when I'm out of the bar, I'm trying to relax, I'm like, I don't want to talk about it,
Yeah. When you're over there, this is a question I've always want to ask you, is like, did you make a conscious decision to have the bar in that area? The reason I asked is because when you go over Manhattan, especially, there's bars every corner, there's bars every few meters. But when you go down to that area, they're definitely few and far between in comparison to like more near Central Park, for example. Was that a conscious decision to put it down there, or just by luck or chance?
I mean, all of the above, I'd say. There was that, we were telling the story, like the story, the American and Irish story, it actually intersected in Financial District. Those two worlds coexisted in this area. The building is obviously from that era. It's from 1828. We had a tri-level space, so we could perfectly do the operations the way that we wanted. So there was a lot of that type of stuff. There was a lot of fortune and luck and happenstance, but we also really knew that the area was underserved. There wasn't great cocktail bars, there wasn't great pubs. There was like high-end steakhouses that were quite stuffy, but the area was starting to go through a change. There was a lot of people were moving into the area. Younger people were moving into the area. There's obviously a big working population, and then obviously there's a huge tourism population, with the Statue of Liberty and the Bull in Wall Street. So we felt like it was where there was a lot of pros. There was definitely cons. The block that we worked, or we are now, it was known for bars or businesses open and close. And that still happens. There's still businesses that open and close very often, but weighing up all the pros in terms of accessibility, the saturation of the market down here, and being underserved, there was a lot of things that made sense, and obviously conceptually it made sense. So we felt in our bones that it was the right thing to do, and I'm so happy that we did it, because I can't imagine the New York location being anywhere else.
Yeah. So fast forward. Oh, sorry, Steve. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask very, very quickly. Have you had many famous people come into the bars, or is there anyone that you could point out that has been a class person that you've had to meet, or you've got to meet during this?
So the person I'd say that's been a celebrity that's been the best for the bar would be Liam Neeson.
Nice.
So it's not that he's in the bar all the time, and I'm actually quite friendly with his son now. But he brought in, there's a scene in Gangs of New York where he has the the cross before he goes into battle, and a sword. from the Gangs of New York movie, and he had to ask Martin Scorsese to get those artifacts to bring into the bar, and Martin Scorsese said yes, no problem, but make sure they fix it and get it polished. So it's sitting downstairs now. I'm actually looking at it, and I'll show you when you're in next time. But he has it's here, and it's from the movie, and we've got the certificate of authority. So he's been great for the bar, and very kind. But in terms of celebrities, the thing about New York, they're everywhere, you know, and you wouldn't know if they're here. I mean, Lady Gaga's been in sitting at the end of the bar without any of the makeup, with any of the war paint on, and you wouldn't even know it's her. I've seen there's loads of them, you know. But the thing is, I remember reading the day after Eva Mendes was in, and I was working that night, and I had no idea that she was in the bar. You know, it's because you just don't, because they're wearing their glasses and their baseball caps, and like the way we're looking now, and you just don't know. You don't know if they're celebrities or not. So yeah, but we've had a fair few in.
That Liam Neeson one, it's just I actually read about that there before we jumped on here. That must have been a class feeling. Not even this, like, he comes to the bar, for him to actually have to go out of his way to donate a prop from an amazing movie, from a Martin Scorsese movie, to your bar. Like, that's must be a class feeling.
It's amazing. I mean, it's amazing. The bar, it's what the bar means to people from back home, and the resonance that it has, and the meaning and stuff like that. And even when I come into the bar during the day, when things were pre-coronavirus, coming in and hearing accents from the Falls Road or from the south, you know, and even from Cornwall or England, you know, it was a real expat feeling, and it's something that I'd say that in and of itself is something that I have tremendous pride for, you know, because it definitely is something that everybody can be proud of, you know.
You are now listening to MCPodcasting.